U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump take part in their first televised debate September 10th. The two major party 2024 presidential candidates have never actually met. They will face questions on a variety of topics, including the economy, which remains the top issue of voters according to the latest Reuters Ipsos poll. Many of those voters are concerned with inflation.
We're going to pay down our debt, and we're going to reduce your taxes still further, and your groceries are going to come tumbling down.
The Republican presidential nominee has vowed to lower prices, but has not offered any specifics on how he would achieve this. Trump has promised to make the tax cuts his administration passed permanent and suggested new across-the-board tariffs on imports while reducing red tape for businesses. Harris has said Trump's tariff plan would be the equivalent of a tax on Americans.
That would cost a typical American family, the economists have said this, almost $4,000 a year.
She has proposed a federal ban on price gouging on food and groceries. Republicans and some industry groups have called that idea ill-considered. Harris also has outlined proposals to cut taxes for most Americans and build more affordable housing. When it comes to immigration, Harris said in a recent CNN interview she would renew a push for comprehensive border legislation that would tighten migration into the United States and vowed to enforce our laws against border crossings. The enforcement first position is a departure from Biden's 2020 campaign, when he pledged a more humane approach to immigration than Trump. Biden gradually hardened his approach as illegal crossings increased.
She allowed at least 20 million people to invade our country.
The Trump campaign has sought to blame Harris for illegal immigration, dubbing her a failed border czar, though her portfolio was focused on the drivers of migration from Central America, not enforcement at the border. The former president promised to crack down on illegal immigration and restrict legal immigration if elected to a second four-year term on November 5th. On the issue of abortion, Trump said recently he would vote against an amendment in his home state of Florida that would enshrine abortion rights in the state's constitution and overturn a current 6-week abortion ban. Trump has also indicated the matter should be decided by individual states, but he said that if elected, he would require governments or insurance companies to pay for IVF fertility treatments.
When Congress passes a bill to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade, I will sign it into law.
Harris has promised to sign a bill that would restore reproductive freedom. She has painted Republicans as a threat to women's rights, including access to birth control, abortion medication, and fertility treatments. Trump, as president, appointed 3 of the Supreme Court justices who made up the conservative majority that ended constitutional protection for abortion.
China's President Xi Jinping has promised Africa more than $50 billion in fresh funding. That's as he opened a major China-Africa summit in Beijing on Thursday.
China is willing to deepen cooperation with Africa in the areas of industry and agriculture, infrastructure, trade, and investment.
She said 210 billion yuan of the financing, a little under $30 billion, would be dispersed through credit lines, and 70 billion yuan in fresh investment by Chinese companies. He also told delegates from more than 50 African countries that the world's second largest economy would carry out 30 infrastructure projects. The Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Summit chalks out a 3-year program for China and every African state bar Eswatini, which retains ties to Taiwan. But the priorities of the world's biggest two-way lender have been shifting, including a desire to move away from big-ticket infrastructure projects. Instead, Beijing wants to sell developing countries the advanced and green technologies in which Chinese firms have invested heavily. At the summit, Xi said China was ready to launch 30 clean energy projects in Africa. And South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa warned delegates that climate change is causing widespread devastation.
The world is falling behind in its efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The global contestation for critical minerals is fueling geopolitical rivalry. These challenges affect all nations, but are more often severely felt on the African continent.
Earlier this week, Ramaphosa told Xi that he wants to narrow his country's trade deficit with China, an aspiration almost all African countries share. However, on Thursday, Xi did not reiterate a pledge made at the last summit 3 years ago to buy $300 billion worth of African goods. Instead, he promised only to unilaterally expand market access. Analysts say Beijing's strict market access rules are blocking African food exporters from selling in to the giant consumer market.
Ukraine will resist, as it has done so far, and Ukraine will win.
In the wake of Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba became one of Kiev's most prominent faces on the global stage, crisscrossing continents to secure crucial military and diplomatic aid for his embattled nation, from Warsaw to the United Nations, and making the case for NATO membership in Brussels.
Minister Kuleba, welcome, Dmytro. It's good to have you here.
But on Wednesday, Kuleba resigned. The 43-year-old diplomat is the highest-profile figure to step down in a major government reshuffle ordered by President Volodymyr Zelensky. Asked about the personnel changes at a news conference on Wednesday, Zelensky said he was grateful for the ministers who worked for Ukraine for many years. He added, quote, "We need new energy today, and these steps are related only to the strengthening of our state in different directions. International policy, diplomacy is not an exception." Ukraine is at a critical juncture in the 30-month war against Russia. Russian forces are advancing in the east of Ukraine, while Ukrainian troops have made a bold incursion into Russia's Kursk region. On Tuesday, at least 50 people, including soldiers, were killed by 2 missiles in the central Ukrainian town of Poltava in the deadliest single attack of the war this year. Later this month, Zelensky travels to the United States, where he hopes to present a, quote, victory plan to U.S. President Joe Biden. More resignations and appointments are expected over the coming days. 5 ministers stepped down on Tuesday.
I notified the Prime Minister that I've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement.
Canada's left-leaning New Democratic Party delivered an unexpected blow to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Wednesday.
The Liberals have let people down.
In a video posted on social media, its leader said the party will no longer automatically support Trudeau's minority Liberal government. That means Trudeau will be forced to strike new alliances to keep governing. He dismissed talks of an early election, vowing to stay on and continue pushing through social programs.
I am not focused on politics. I'll let other parties focus on politics. I'm focused on actually delivering the things that Canadians told me this summer they need.
Under the 2022 deal, the NDP agreed to keep Trudeau in power until mid-2025 in return for more social spending. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh accused the Prime Minister of not being able to take on the opposition Conservatives.
The fact is, the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people. They cannot be the change. They cannot restore the hope.
Trudeau first took office in November 2015. Polls suggest he is suffering from voter fatigue, with the Conservatives forecasted to easily win an upcoming election. Canadians must head to the polls by the end of October 2025. Mexico's lower house of Congress approved a controversial judicial reform on Wednesday after a marathon session that lasted more than 12 hours. It paves the way for the bill to go to the Senate, where it is expected to be approved due to the ruling Morena Party's strong majority. Judicial workers and students protested the vote outside of Congress, forcing lawmakers into a nearby gym. They want to have this gift ready before the incumbent president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, leaves office, said this court clerk at the protest. The debate began on Tuesday afternoon, passing Wednesday morning with 359 votes in favor and 135 votes against. Opponents criticized the single-session debate and passage as a rush job, saying more time should have been taken. The backbone of the constitutional reform calls for the election by popular vote of more than 7,000 judges and magistrates, including the Supreme Court. The number of Supreme Court judges would also be reduced to 9 from 11, and their terms limited to 12 years. Work experience needed to qualify for ministerial positions would be cut in half. Outgoing President López Obrador has argued that reform is necessary to hold judges accountable and reduce corruption. President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum is also in support. Critics have said the reform will not impact prosecutors, police, and public ministries, which they blame as the real culprits of impunity and corruption. It also generated concern among investors and the U.S. ambassador to Mexico, who worry it would weaken a crucial check and balance of the executive branch and damage the business climate in the country.
Volkswagen held a tense staff meeting Wednesday. It was delayed for several minutes when its finance chief took to the stage to boos and shouts of goodbye. Finance chief Arno Antlitz argued the automaker has 1, maybe 2 years left to turn its main car brand around. He appealed to the joint responsibility of staff and management to cut spending if the brand is to survive the shift to electric vehicles. The auto giant is considering its first ever plant closures in Germany, but its powerful union has threatened to fight back. 2 workers at a VW plant in Germany spoke of their concerns.
Everyone is worried about his job, but I can't say anything more about it right now because nothing is official. But everyone is worried. It would be unusual if not.
The situation is definitely tense. No one knows where this journey will take us to, and as a contract worker, we will probably be the first who will have to leave. Our contracts run until January 31st. It will be difficult to find an adequate job with this kind of salary which secures our existence.
Antlitz said Europe's car market shrank after the pandemic. He further argued the company faced a shortfall in demand of around 500,000 cars, the equivalent of about 2 plants. Antlitz added he did not expect sales to recover and the core VW brand needed to cut spending and adjust output. The Works Council chief, Daniele Carvalho, said management had massively damaged trust. One union representative also said there would be no talks unless Volkswagen took plant closures off the table. VW said Monday it was considering closing factories in Germany and ending a job guarantee at 6 of its facilities. It's part of a drive to deepen an $11 billion cost-cutting plan. Management has blamed financial pressures on a worsening German economy and new competitors. But unions said the carmaker's production strategy was inefficient and decision makers have been too slow in investing to produce a mass-market electric vehicle. VW's issues reflect challenges for Europe's car giants, including Stellantis and Renault. They face high labour and energy costs and rising competition from lower-priced Asian rivals.
At least 4 people were killed and 9 others were being treated for injuries after a shooting at a high school in Winder, Georgia on Wednesday.
Of those that are deceased, 2 were students and 2 were teachers.
Chris Hosey, the director of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, said a 14-year-old student at the school is in custody.
He will be charged with murder and he will be tried as an adult.
One student had texted his mother, "School shooting right now. I'm scared. And someone's dead." On a road close to the school, parents waited anxiously for students to be released. Michelle and J.R. Watson have a granddaughter at the school, located some 50 miles northeast of Atlanta, and said it was a terrifying ordeal.
Really sad. It took us a while before we realized that she wasn't one of the victims. I mean, it was what, a good 45 minutes, probably an hour before we got word that she was okay. It was very terrifying. We just came back from a long weekend vacation with the whole family, and to come back to this the first day back, just terrible. Just hard to grasp.
Speaking at a campaign event in New Hampshire, Vice President Kamala Harris called for an end to the epidemic of gun violence in America.
This is just a senseless tragedy. on top of so many senseless tragedies. Our kids are sitting in a classroom where they should be fulfilling their God-given potential, and some part of their big, beautiful brain is concerned about a shooter busting through the door of the classroom. It does not have to be this way.
The shooting was the first of the new school year in the United States and served as a stark reminder to students, teachers, and parents of the threat of gun violence in schools across the nation.
Joe Biden is close to blocking Nippon Steel's takeover of U.S. Steel. That's according to two Reuters sources. The news comes amid growing bipartisan opposition to the $14.9 billion deal. But U.S. Steel has warned that any failure to proceed could put thousands of jobs at risk and force it to close some facilities. Even so, the Reuters sources say a block could be announced as early as this week. Shares in the U.S. firm plunged 17.5% Wednesday after the likely veto was first reported by the Washington Post. Nippon Steel shares initially fell in early trade Thursday, but later rallied. Biden is expected to cite national security risks for blocking the takeover by the Japanese firm, and that's unlikely to go down well in Tokyo, one of Washington's closest allies. However, U.S. Steel has become a hot-button issue in America's closely fought presidential election. It's based in Pennsylvania, a crucial battleground state that some think could determine the result of the vote. Addressing a rally there earlier in the week, Democrat candidate Kamala Harris said she opposed the deal.
U.S. Steel is an historic American company, and it is vital for our nation to maintain strong American steel companies, and I couldn't agree more with President Biden. U.S. Steel should remain American-owned and American-operated.
Republican candidate Donald Trump has also pledged to block the deal if elected. A White House spokesman declined to comment on Biden's intentions. U.S. Steel said it would pursue all legal avenues to ensure the takeover got done, and Nippon Steel called on Washington to handle the matter in accordance with the law.
Firefighters near Brazil's capital city managed to reduce a massive wildfire on Wednesday that blazed for 2 days and destroyed 20% of a forest nearby that has cloaked the city in grey smoke. Officials suspect that it may have been started by arsonists. Firefighter Godoy has been putting out the flames.
At this moment, we're trying to protect and control the area where the farms are located. This fire started yesterday, and the wind is now pushing the fire to the farms. The big problem is that roads like the one we're on are not able to contain the embers of 50 meters and 60 meters height, which is a big problem for the fire department.
The National Forest of Brasilia protects vital springs that provide 70% of the city's fresh water and is a conservation area that spans more than 21 square miles of woodland. The fire ignited during the dry season, allowing it to spread rapidly. Firefighters struggled to contain it before it could spread to nearby orchards where farmers grow tomatoes and flowers, despite strong winds complicating their efforts. The forest size was almost halved in 2022 to give way to urban development under former far-right President Jair Bolsonaro, who reduced environmental controls and allowed deforestation to surge in the Amazon rainforest. This year, a record drought and the El Niño weather pattern have heightened fire risks in the Amazon, with August seeing the most fires since 2010.
Uganda's main opposition leader, Bobi Wine, was shot in the leg by security agents in a northern suburb of the capital Kampala on Tuesday, his party has said. The pop star turned politician has emerged as the most formidable opponent of veteran President Yoweri Museveni, who has ruled the East African country for nearly 4 decades. Police have in the past routinely broken up Wine's rallies with tear gas, bullets, beatings and detentions. Wine's party, the National Unity Platform, said in a post on the platform X that he was shot in the leg and seriously injured. The NUP described it as, quote, an attempt on one's life. However, police said officers were trying to block Wine and his team from marching down a road, resulting in an altercation in which Wine sustained injuries. Here is Uganda's police force spokesperson, Rusoke Katuma.
He insisted on proceeding and blocking the road, leading to police intervention to stop the procession. During the ensuing altercation, it appears he sustained injuries.
The police said officers on site claimed Wine stumbled while getting into his vehicle, whereas his team says he was shot.
What for us, we are insisting on this, is that until we carry out an investigation, we are a professional body, we cannot jump into any conclusion.
Museveni's government has been accused by opponents and human rights activists of stifling opposition, something Museveni denies. Wine, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, finished runner-up in the 2021 presidential election behind Museveni. He amassed huge support amongst the youth in Uganda, with many wooed initially by his rags-to-riches story as a pop star from the ghetto, and in recent years by his bold attacks on Museveni's government.